Millions of families are making dangerous decisions about dementia and Alzheimer's, based on things that simply are not true. They wait too long to see a doctor because they believe memory loss is just normal aging. They assume a diagnosis means life is essentially over. They think there is nothing they can do to lower their own risk. Every one of these beliefs is a myth, and every one of them can cost precious time, precious years, or precious peace of mind. Today we are breaking down 8 of the most common dementia and Alzheimer's myths, myths that millions of people still believe, and that doctors say are dangerously wrong. By the end of this video, you will know the difference between what is actually true and what is simply a story we have been told for far too long. Welcome back. What you believe about dementia shapes every decision you make, when you see a doctor, how you talk to someone you love, and even how much hope you allow yourself to feel. That is exactly why myths are so dangerous. A myth does not just misinform you. It quietly guides your actions in the wrong direction, often for years, without you ever realizing it. Families delay diagnosis because of a myth. Families give up hope because of a myth. Families miss real opportunities to lower their own risk because of a myth. These myths do not come from nowhere. They spread because they sound reasonable. They get repeated at family dinners, in casual conversation, even by well-meaning friends who genuinely believe they are being helpful. And because dementia is still surrounded by fear and silence in so many households, very few people ever stop to fact-check what they have been told. The 8 myths we are about to cover are not just wrong. Doctors and researchers now say some of them are actively harmful because they stop people from getting help early, when help matters the most. Let's go through all 8, including one near the middle of this list, that could genuinely change how you think about your own future. One more thing before we start. As you go through this list, you may notice yourself thinking, I already knew that one for some, and feeling genuinely surprised by others. That is completely normal. Even people working in healthcare sometimes carry 1 or 2 of these myths without realizing it, simply because they were never formally taught otherwise. This video is not about making anyone feel foolish. It is about replacing outdated assumptions with what the current evidence actually shows. Myth 1. Dementia is just normal aging. The first myth is one of the most common and one of the most damaging. Dementia is not a normal part of getting older. It is true that mild forgetfulness can happen with age, misplacing keys occasionally, or blanking on a name for a moment before it comes back to you. But dementia is a disease caused by physical damage to brain cells, and it follows a very different pattern than ordinary aging. Most people in fact never develop dementia at all, even into their 90s, which means the phrase, everyone gets a little dementia eventually, simply is not supported by the evidence. This myth matters because it causes families to dismiss real warning signs. Getting lost on a familiar drive, struggling to follow a conversation, repeating the same story within minutes, as just getting older. That dismissal can delay diagnosis by months or even years, at exactly the stage when earlier intervention and planning could have made the most meaningful difference. Myth 2. Only elderly people get dementia. The second myth is the belief that dementia only affects people in their 70s, 80s, or beyond. In reality, younger onset dementia exists, sometimes appearing in a person's 40s or 50s, while they are still working, raising children, or caring for their own aging parents. Because doctors and families do not expect to see it at that age, younger onset dementia is diagnosed late far more often, sometimes mistaken for stress, burnout, depression, or even relationship problems for years before the real cause is identified. If a younger person you know is showing unusual changes in memory, judgment, or personality, age alone should never be a reason to rule dementia out. And it should never be a reason a doctor delays a proper evaluation. Myth 3. Dementia is only about memory loss. The third myth is thinking dementia is simply a memory problem. Memory loss is often the most visible symptom, but dementia can affect language, reasoning, judgment, mood, personality, and even physical movement and coordination depending on the type. Some forms, like frontotemporal dementia, affect personality and behavior before memory is noticeably impacted at all. A person might struggle to find the right words, lose the ability to plan a simple task, or undergo a personality shift, while their memory for names and dates remains largely intact for quite some time. Because families are often only watching for forgetfulness, these other symptoms get missed entirely, sometimes attributed to stress, a difficult personality, or a midlife crisis instead of a neurological condition. Myth 4. Without family history, you are not at risk. The fourth myth is believing that if no one in your family has had dementia, you are safe. Family history does increase risk for some forms of dementia, particularly certain genetic variants linked to early-onset Alzheimer's. But most cases occur in people with no direct family history at all. Age, cardiovascular health, lifestyle factors, sleep quality, and overall brain health play a far larger role for the vast majority of cases than genetics alone. This myth gives people false reassurance on one side and unnecessary fear on the other. Those with a family history sometimes assume dementia is inevitable, while those without one assume they have nothing to worry about. In reality, everyone benefits from understanding and managing their own personal risk factors, regardless of what happened in previous generations. And here is where this list gets genuinely hopeful, because myth number 5 is the one that surprises almost everyone who hears it. Myth 5. There is nothing you can do to prevent it. The 5th myth is the belief that dementia is entirely outside of your control, something that either happens to you or does not, with no say in the matter. Major research, including findings published by international dementia research commissions, suggests that a significant portion of dementia cases may be linked to modifiable risk factors, things like untreated hearing loss, high blood pressure, physical inactivity, social isolation, smoking, and poor sleep. That does not mean dementia is always preventable, and it is not anyone's fault if it develops despite their best efforts. But it does mean risk is not entirely fixed, and meaningful evidence-based steps exist that may genuinely help lower risk over the course of a lifetime. This myth may be the most dangerous one of all because believing there is nothing you can do removes the motivation to make changes in your 40s, 50s, and 60s that research suggests could meaningfully help you later on. Myth 6. People with dementia cannot understand what is happening. The 6th myth is assuming that once someone has dementia, they lose all awareness of their situation, their surroundings, or their own feelings. In reality, many people in the early and moderate stages of dementia remain deeply aware, both of the world around them and of the changes happening within themselves. They can feel embarrassment when they forget something important. They can feel sadness watching their own abilities decline. They can feel love and offer it, often long after their memory has become unreliable. Speaking about someone as if they are not present in the room, simply because of a diagnosis, or making decisions about their life without including them, can cause real and unnecessary emotional pain. Treating someone with dignity, choice, and inclusion for as long as possible matters far more than most families realize until they see how much their loved one still notices. Myth 8. A diagnosis means life is basically over. The 8th and final myth may be the most emotionally damaging of all. The belief that a dementia diagnosis means meaningful life has essentially ended the moment the words are spoken in a doctor's office. Many people live for years, sometimes many years, after diagnosis, and with the right support, medical care, and environment, those years can include genuine connection, laughter, milestones, and moments that matter deeply, both for the person diagnosed and for the family around them. A diagnosis changes the shape of the road ahead. It does not erase the person walking it, and it is the beginning of a different chapter, not the end of the story. Let me speak directly to you for a moment. What you believe about dementia shapes what you do next. If you believed any of these 8 myths before today, you are not alone, and you are certainly not to blame. These beliefs are common precisely because they have been repeated for generations, at family dinners and in casual conversation, without anyone ever stopping to check whether they were actually true. But now you know better. And that knowledge can change real decisions. It might mean seeing a doctor sooner instead of waiting another year to see if it gets worse. It might mean taking your own brain health seriously starting today, instead of assuming there is nothing you can do about your future. It might simply mean speaking to someone you love with a little more patience and dignity, because you now understand how much they may still be aware of, even when words become harder for them to find. If this video corrected something you believed, please hit the like button. It helps this information reach more families before a myth costs them valuable time they cannot get back. Subscribe so you never miss a video in this series. We cover everything from early warning signs to caregiving strategies to the real science behind Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. Share this video with someone who might still believe one of these myths. It could genuinely change the decisions they make this year. Drop a comment below. Which of these 8 myths did you believe before today? I read every comment, and your honesty might be exactly what helps another family see things clearly for the first time. Thank you for being here. You are doing something powerful simply by staying informed. I will see you in the next one.